Hello there and welcome to the strategic analysis for the August 2019 MCS on Cruisecalm. So the first thing I would like to mention, of course, is that we are looking at the cruise holiday industry for the latest MCS. It's very complex and it has quite a few changing demographics that we found in the industry analysis. But of course, this is based on the fact that obviously not many of us are going to be experts in the cruise industry just off the cuff. And the notable things here are that Cruisecalm are the leading cruise company in their country of Norland. However, there's a number of risks and a significant role of CSR in this industry. There's plenty of things that are interesting about this company to look at. So let's start with the rational model. So the analysis uses the rational planning model where we've got our sort of strategic locations. So where we want to be is the future, of course, and this relates to our missions and objectives relating to governance, ethics, and stakeholder mapping. And then, of course, we have our now, which is our pestle, fire forces, value chain, the overarching business environment. And, the business strategy is how we get from the now, which is our SWAT, fire forces, etc., through to the future, which will be dictated by our mission and objectives. So the first thing we need to look at, of course, is where do we want to be? What is the key aspects to the company? Where does the company want to go? So our mission, if you want to recall, is why does the organization exist? How will it compete? What does it stand for in terms of, is it a quality leader? Is it looking to be the cheapest? Stuff like that. They've also got the policies. So, what are people expected to follow to ensure they act within these defined values, strategy, and the overarching purpose of the business? So, how do we actually measure this kind of performance? So, in regards to the mission, we may want to use the balanced scorecard. And in this case, our financial perspective is going to look at profit, for example, cash flow. Gearing is going to be a significant issue for this company given how high their gearing is. We've also got internal perspective, which will look at employee utilization, the on-time cruises, success rates, investment in IT, project management, etc. Then we've got our learning perspective, which will be especially important given all the staff members we've got across the ship. And this is largely going to be the activity staff, the hotel style staff, the maritime staff, the deck crew. There's lots of training to go about here. Very, very important to measure this effectively. And of course, the hours spent on training will have a significant impact on the quality service we provide. Then, of course, we've got our customer perspective. So how many do we have? How many complained? How many services did we render? And what was their satisfaction? Our big data is going to be quite significant here as well, of course. So with that said, we can look at our governance. So governance is the way we organize our company, how they're directed, administrated, and controlled. And this has the aim of ensuring that the organization is run in a way that is right for all of our stakeholders, including, and most importantly, the shareholders. So according to the Code of Corporate Governance for the UK, good governance includes separate chairmen and CEO, independent non-executive directors, an audit, nomination and remuneration committee, risk management focus, etc. You can look through these. These are used as just rough guidelines. You don't have to remember this for the exam. Please be aware. This is not what you need to put in the exam, but just take the top three. That's the key things I would take out from this. Those are the kind of aspects we need to be questioning on these cases. So, how does it work in terms of application? Well, they're quoted, so they're duty bound to certain governance regulations on the stock market. Apologies for that typo there. We do have a functional structure which differentiates between the different functions, which has some pros and cons, which we went through in the preceding analysis. First and foremost, a con will be communication and goal congruence, but on the flip side we have the benefit of focused responsibilities and everyone knowing their role. There isn't a mention of remuneration, nomination, or audit committees, so that could come up in a governance question, but we do have non-executive directors, which is actually a rarity. So in this case, I mean a rarity for the cases that we study at the MCS. So in this case, it's worth noting that we have that disparity between our actual directors and some non-executive ones, which is a form of good governance. Next, we have ethics and CSR. It's a really, really important topic for the industry. I do recommend at this point that you look at the industry analysis if you haven't done so already. But if you haven't, not to worry, we will gloss over some of the key points here. But essentially, there are 21 marks for people, and this is largely where ethics comes into. And it might be that you have a specific ethical requirement, and then you will have to discuss, how this impacts our business, how we can fit it into our CSR, etc. So the key ethics and CSR issues from this case is what we contribute to the community. So for example, we had the issue in the exhibits that cruise companies just, cruise to certain locations, they drop off lots of disruptive passengers, but there's no economic benefit for those locations. There's also the industry example we had in the industry analysis where we had the Haitian government being taken advantage of by big cruise companies, and there not being any real economic benefits for the local population, which are very poor. So community contribution is really important. We've also got our CSR report, which is completely non-existent in the pre-scene. That is astonishing. We're a quoted company, so we'll have some requirement to submit a sort of broad financial report, or annual report I should say, that will include some CSR elements. We need to reduce the environmental footprint. The overall industry causes a lot of emissions, especially sulfur oxide. Legal liabilities, so waste disposal is going to be a key issue here. We know that MARPOL, the regulatory body for the maritime stuff, is extremely active, and we really need to make sure that we don't fall foul of the same issues that are following the big companies such as Carnival, where they've had lots of high-profile cases of dumping waste into the ocean, receiving big fines, and potentially getting a ban at certain ports for that behaviour. The ethical treatment of staff is super important. We know there are some labour issues that happen on cruise ships, specifically related to the fact they can register in any location and be headquartered elsewhere. So you can be registered in an African country with weak labour laws and be operating in North America, for example. So in this case, we have to be careful of that, make sure we're not falling foul of that. It's very bad for our brand. And finally, health and safety. Lots of high-profile health and safety cases. This relates mostly to training our staff to take care of the ship and the voyage as best as possible. That will be one of the key elements there. Some minor or lesser issues that could arise is bribery at the ports, getting access to a port for a bribe. Professional ethics, which will link to CIMA ethical standards. This is where they put you in a sort of compromised situation and you're looking to do the most ethical thing possible. That's what they want from you. And of course, treatment of staff again can be brought up with overworking, a potential issue as well, even in the face of regulations. So what are our critical success factors? We did touch on this a little bit in the pre-scene analysis, but let's go over these again. Critical success factors are essentially the things the organization must do well to be a success in the overall industry and in business. So with this in mind, if there is a contradiction in regards to some information with the critical success factors, then you should question whether that strategy or that project is appropriate, because we're seeking to stick to these critical success factors because they're so important to our operations. So by contradicting them, then there has to be the question of whether it's appropriate, and if so, why is it appropriate to change away from what has been a critical source of success? So let's have a look now at what the CSFs are for Cruisecalm. And as part of being a premium brand, reliability is going to be key, making sure voyages, go as intended with as much shore time as possible without, limiting the excursion time, etc. To use the latest technology to be, the most impressive service around. We're looking to be a premium provider of cruises, and cruises are already a more luxurious option than traditional holidays in most cases. So with this in mind, things like, early check-in software, which allows people to skip past admin costs and admin time for the passenger, improving not only our costs, but passenger experience, for example. Also, in the exhibits, we had the wristbands. Those could be implemented to keep people safe and happy from any sort of risks of theft or losing their children, for example. Then we've got cost control, where there is, a large emphasis on making sure that we have all of our foods to a high quality, etc., but by making sure they're all stocked appropriately for our passengers without too much over sort of subscription. We don't want to, have too much stock for the cruise, because that would harm our profit margin, which already isn't the largest at just under 10%. So with this in mind, cost control is really important. High quality across the board, of course, is really important. And customer trust. Making customers believe in the brand is going to be critical to getting them to go on to our cruises versus others. Likewise, data analysis and sort of big data decisions, so that's Gartner's 3 V's again. Make sure that you do revise that topic. Big data and informing our decisions with consumer data is incredibly important. We have shifting demographics, we have constant feedback, and people want different things typically. So with this in mind, we also want to make our cruises quite bespoke in terms of what we're offering for our passengers based on who they are and where they come from. So data analysis is really, really important to inform those key management decisions. Hello, it's me again. I just wanted to take a few minutes of your time to first extend my hope that you enjoyed the free sample that you've just viewed, but also to just sort of explain what else does strategy do to help you pass your exam really effectively, provided you found our sample particularly interesting and insightful, of course. So, of course, we have a study text for every module, ranging from P1 to F3, and the certificate level is also free on our website. So we have study texts throughout the CIMA course, every module you could hope to study. The certificate level are free, as I mentioned, and then the rest of them, ranging from P1 to F3, are all available to purchase. Alongside this, if you're not so much a study text kind of student and you prefer a visual way of learning, we have the course videos. We essentially break down the study text into bite-sized presentations with a walkthrough, and it's a very, very, very engaging way of explaining the course. Following this, we have the pre-scene analysis, where we break down each pre-scene sitting into a number of videos, going through the whole document, but also adding a top 10 recommendations for what will come up in the exam, and also a strategic analysis where we put all the models you'd find in E2, for example, to the pre-scene itself, whichever that may be at the time. Alongside this, we provide an industry analysis. This is a document and accompanying video which help you give that contextual information in your exam. So, for example, if the pre-scene's on the oil industry, the industry analysis will break down the oil industry, the current topics, trends, issues, what the competitive market looks like, all those kind of aspects, all condensed into one so you can spend your time wisely in your study period. Following on from this, when you actually want to practice all this knowledge, we have mock exams for all of our materials. So StudyText has a generic mock exam based on the module, whereas the pre-scene analysis has mocks available to purchase that are based on that specific pre-scene, that are targeted to the key issues we believe will come up. And if you're not content with just doing those mock exams and practicing that way, we have a marking and feedback system where you can purchase the ability to send in your paper, have it marked by a CIMA qualified accountant, and get personalized feedback on whether you can improve X or Y area. And sort of finally, if you will, if you're feeling really underprepared and that exam is coming really soon, the masterclasses are offered by Astranti, and they're essentially a crash course in anything you could want for that topic. So if it's a masterclass on the pre-scene, it's going to give you absolutely everything that you could possibly need to know about the pre-scene in one really condensed sitting. Likewise, if it was the F3 masterclass, you would have all of F3 gone through in a very crash course style presentation and video link. You can also purchase it post-stream as opposed to viewing it live, all these kind of aspects. We are very confident that these materials will help you get the exam success that you want. So we have a pass guarantee, provided you fill out a form which demonstrates that you have utilized our materials to a large extent and actually taken the time to study them, and you have unfortunately failed. We will offer you the same materials again for the next sitting as a consolidatory offer to ensure that you can get back on the horse and get that exam grade that you want. With that said, thank you very much for watching the sample video. I hope you enjoyed it and it gives you a lot of confidence in Astranti and your CIMA future.